And the work involved usually before they come to us is quiet, stop it. And then they move on with their life. And there's never any practice. There's never any rehearsal. There's never any rewarding of the dog not barking.
Right.
And so if you really want to fix barking, you need to participate in the solution. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dog Sense. I am your host, Kathy Santo, and I am joined by a lot of people actually, including my co-host, Sarah, all the way out in Colorado. Hey, Sarah.
Hey everyone. And then also joining us, we've got our amazing team of New Jersey trainers. We've got Nikki, Stacy, and Lauren joining us as well to help answer some, we had some listeners and also some students submit questions to us to answer. So let's get right into it. So the first one's going to be, so Nikki, I'll have you answer this one. So Norman is 6 months old and his owner had asked, I've been noticing Norman is scared or startled by things more frequently lately. How do I handle this? For example, there's a larger ball or a Christmas tree. He's jumping and barking jumping backwards and barking at it.
Got it. So that's a good body language cue that he wrote in, that he's jumping, like there's a level of curiosity, but I'm a little cautious, so I'm moving back. The one thing that you always want to do is come up with a threshold. So I say it's like a math equation. If your dog's a little bit reluctant of something, you want to make sure that you have enough distance away from the trigger where they're interested in the food that you have. If you're very close to it, you better have something very high value. What you want to also think about is that if it's an object, you might want to play with how it's maybe standing up. If it's a tree, if you can, lay it on its side before it goes completely upright. Same thing with like a vacuum cleaner is a big one. You also want to think that if your dog's a little bit reluctant in one area, you want to make sure that you're doing a lot of confidence building and a lot of training. So that way there's a little bit more predictability in their life. And that way they're building up confidence in other areas. So if you know there's one thing that they're a little bit nervous about, if you plug in confidence in other areas, it does kind of help transfer over.
Nikki, talk about the age thing, because I feel like if this is the Norman that I know, I feel like there's an adolescent component to this. So talk about that. There's definitely certain times in a dog's life where they might be in this adolescent phase where they might be in the realm of being a little bit more cautious. So if it's something that was abrupt and all of a sudden he's starting to bark at different objects, that's definitely an indication that it might just be a phase that he's going through, but you tackle it the same way. So that's just something to consider too. Age is definitely a factor. And I want to just jump in quickly and say, sometimes your dog startles from something and that's it, and let it go, right? The problem can sometimes happen where they're like, oh my gosh, my dog got afraid of this garbage can, so I'm going to bring him up to every garbage can. And it could have been just a normal, in that box of normal response to it blowing over. But now you're making it a bigger deal. So there is some wisdom to sort of backing off and just seeing if it's an actual problem before you create it.
One other piece of it is that you also want to try to be proactive with it. If a dog gives you an extroverted response, like a bark, a low growl, whatever it is, there's about 3 to 4 body language signals that got missed before there was an actual response. So you want to make sure that you're very versed on body language. So that way you understand the threshold of where your dog's at before there's an actual extroverted response.
All right. So Stacy, we had another question about barking. So this one was from Dahlia. She's 1 year and 8 months. Her owner had asked, Dahlia likes to loudly bark at us when she wants to play. What is the best way to change that behavior to something like bringing a toy?
I know who Dahlia is.
I know who Dahlia is. Yes. But even before that, I was thinking, you got a dog who's barking at you because they want to play, man. That's just pushy pants stuff right there. A little sassy.
And what's the formal term that we call it? So they know. Demand.
Are we allowed to say that?
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry.
For the behavior.
Sorry.
Oh boy.
Okay. Mine went to the wrong place.
Barking.
Demand barking. Yes. Demand barking. Attention-seeking behaviors such as barking, pawing, nudging, whining, taking the ball and shoving it in your lap, all of these types of things. Yeah, why'd you sit next to me?
I was going to say, you got biting my arm.
Side note, inside scoop, Dahlia's mom actually figured out that her training partner taught Dahlia how to paw where she didn't.
Saboteurs.
Yes. So when you open Pandora's box, sometimes you get more pushy behaviors because another pushy behavior had worked. So, all right, let's talk solutions, right? So if she comes up to you and starts barking because she wants your attention, first, my gut reaction is going to be, see you later, bye. And literally walk in the bathroom very quickly and slam the door in her face and just remove myself. Another option, Dahlia has a pretty good level of training, right? So we could say, well, when you bark at me, that my response is place for the next 10 minutes and then go on with what I'm doing and leave you there for 10 minutes so that she figures out, you know what, when I bark, I don't get what I want. As a matter of fact, I kind of lose what I want, or I lose my freedom by being sent to place or put it down. But we really want to be very careful. We're not responding to the barking at all. Don't fall into the trap of quiet. No, stop, shut up. Oh, and please, dear God, talking about Google, please do not teach your dog to speak or bark on command so that you can then teach them to be quiet. Or Stacy may jump off a bridge.
That's a tough one.
Now, I also want to say that sometimes they're barking like that and they actually have to go to the bathroom, sometimes with a puppy, right? So you got to make sure you know what's happening.
Yeah.
Also, we like a little miscommunication between the species game. The dog barks and you say, oh, what? You want to go in your crate? Okay, baby. And you put them in and they're like, wow, that was an unexpected consequence. I thought I was going to get something else. And then you can actually see the dog start to attach the barking to that. If you have a dog that you need alerts from, obviously none of this is valid because you need them to bark, but you have to be able to differentiate barking for, I have to go to the bathroom, barking because you created it, and then barking for, just being a demanding dog.
Right. I just have to add one thing.
Hand up. Go, Nikki.
I really try to stress to my students. A lot of people are like, well, I just want my dog to bark at me just to let me know that they have to go to the bathroom. Don't do it. Because once they realize that you're the cabana woman or man, when you respond when they bark, it doesn't just stop at the bathroom. So try to be proactive with your dog's schedule. So that way they're not alerting you to have to go anyway or barking at the back glass door to be let out, because all of those power behaviors are
not just pottying either. Like even if I have people who are like, my dog barks at me when they want water, or my favorite is when they hit the water bowl and they're like, oh, my dog wants water, and we give them water. Oh, they're hungry, and then you feel like you want to go and feed them. But either way, the dog is still in control of the situation, and we don't.
I'm actually surprised we didn't get the question about the dogs barking when they're starting to prep the food.
5 p.m. people were barking.
Yeah.
I had at 4:30, 5:30, 6 o'clock.
I had a lady who was like 5 minutes before she would always feed her dog. Her dog would run around crazy, and she'd be like, well, how do I fix it? Don't feed your dog. Don't feed him at 5 o'clock when he's like that. At that time. Or feed him before he gets like that, right? Being proactive.
Before you make the meal. Or when they do that, sit down and be a zombie. And they're like, well, what is actually happening? I will tell you that dogs' barks all sound different. So you have to learn your dog's bark. I had a student whose dog was barking at the back door and she was like, I'm not going to let him out. I'm not falling for that trick. And actually her other dog was in the yard and broke out.
Oh, wow.
And the dog saw the dog leave the yard.
Oh, wow.
And she was
like, Mom, you're going to want to see this.
Yeah. Thinking back on it, it was a different bark.
It was a different bark.
So be aware of all the variations that they have in their bark.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so a couple more of the barking focused ones, and we'll move on to some other topics. So this one's for Lauren. So this is Poppy. She's 13 months, and her owner said, how do you get your dog to stop barking at every new noise or new dog? Also, when she's out in the front yard, she barks as if to announce to the neighborhood that she is out.
Lovely. So I know Poppy. The first, I go back to barking at the dogs or the sound. So really, not that it depends, but is it inside the house? Is it outside of the house? Is it on the street? So there's a lot of variables in that sense. What I try to do is if I'm inside, I can't control the environment, right? I can't control when there's going to be a dog barking. I can't control when a person's going to walk past my house. I can't control any of that. But what I can control is my own dog. So if I hear that sound, well, really what I want to do is be proactive about it more so and work on those sounds before they happen. So I get a speaker and I'll put it outside my door. Right. And I'll play the sounds. And when the dog doesn't bark, I'll reward them for that or reward them before the sound happens. Right. So that way, if there is a sound, I can say, oh my gosh, good job. And I can go and get a treat afterwards or whatever it is. Outside, it sounds like Poppy's getting a little territorial of her area. Right. She's going outside in the yard and she's barking at every single thing that's walking by. I'm not going to let her outside loose on a leash. Right. Why am I going to let the dog continue the behavior that I don't like? Right. And yes, it's cold out and I just want the dog to go out and go potty or whatever. But I'm not going to allow the dog to continue the behavior that I don't want. So reel the dog back in. Maybe they're on a long line. Maybe I go outside with treats and work on feeding the dog as people walk by the house and all those things. And I also brought me back to the dog's probably doing some window watching inside, but I think that's another topic for another day.
But I think what everybody is saying here is that there's work involved.
Of course.
And the work involved usually before they come to us is quiet, stop it. And then they move on with their life. And there's never any practice. There's never any rehearsal. There's never any rewarding of the dog not barking.
Right.
There's never an opportunity for the dog to learn. And the dog gets locked into that loop of,
Right.
I hear it, I bark, they interact with me, and then we move on. And so if you really want to fix barking, you need to participate in the solution.
Absolutely. And be proactive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So last barking one, and I'm going to combine two here. This one's for Kathy. So the first one, I'll read them both to you. So Dallas is a year old. He's an Australian Shepherd who hasn't been around small children. How can I get him to stop barking at the children and scaring them away? And then the second piece of that question, which was a similar one, was from Ollie, who is 20 months. So Ollie goes crazy barking when he sees boys, not girls, just boys, like ages 4 to 10. The owner had said, I feel like he must have been traumatized or hurt by one, but not sure. In addition to boys, he freaks out over strollers, barks like a lunatic with strollers, big wheels, ride-on toys. Any idea on how to control him when he sees these?
Okay. The first thing you're not going to do is go to a playground at a boys' school.
Yeah.
And put the dog out there, because that's what people typically want to do. I'm going to get you used to it, right? It's not like pushing somebody in a pool and saying, oh, learn to sink or swim, because very likely you might have a bite, because the herding group, as Sarah knows, I know, we live with them, and you guys know because we train them, they can be a little quirky, which is why we like them, but we accept all their limitations. And so I would like to have some desensitization. First of all, I'm fairly certain without even meeting either of these dogs that there's been a time that they've seen a boy or a child or a stroller and haven't barked. There's been one. I know there has been one. And at that point, when there was no bark, was there a reward?
Right.
Probably not. So you're going to get on the mark and treat train, which is you're walking with, I actually bought stew meat like 2 hours ago to cook up for Saturday classes.
You keep the stew meat industry in business.
Yeah.
I do. Yep. Any stew meat sponsors.
And the rotisserie chicken business.
Yes. Beef moves dog training along. So I cook it up and they look at something and I put it right over their head and I'm like, nice. And I'm feeding them for looking and keeping their mouth quiet. And you may need to do that from 50 yards away. You may need to put your dog in the car, drive to an area where there's kids in the distance, get the dog out, have them sit in your lap. You're not driving, remember? And then do that mark and reward thing. And don't do it for an hour, like 3 or 4 reps, and put the dog back in the crate and drive on home. And stop rehearsing what's happening. So people are like, oh, every time I go on this route, my dog does this. Don't go there.
Right.
Go somewhere else. Pick another time. Children aren't out at 1 a.m. Walk the dog then. I mean, what you've got to do is break the cycle. And I know it's a giant pain in the butt. I get it. But the only way you stop a cycle is by not engaging that dog in that behavior. We're not saying he's going to forget it and be perfect, but at least I'm not getting more reps in of rehearsal of what I don't want.
It realistically, it doesn't necessarily mean that the dog had a bad experience with a kid, right? It doesn't mean that like a kid beat him with a broomstick or whatever. It just means that the dog never maybe had a good experience or a positive experience in that sense, right? So, or never had an experience at all. So it doesn't necessarily mean that. So
and that goes for all rescue dogs of that nature. If you don't know their history, that's okay. But also, and I see this a lot with clients too, don't let what you think might have happened affect like kind of what they're capable of in their future, right? So if you had a dog where you think, oh God, a kid might have beat him or something, right? Don't bring that into your training with your dog to get them past it. Most likely they were just never socialized with one. Right. And most likely they have never seen it. And now all of a sudden there's this alien sized child that's eye level with it. And he's like, whoa, what are you? Humans are usually like 6 feet tall. Like this is ridiculous. I don't know what to do. So that's a big piece of it too. And then also don't take it for granted if the dog doesn't do anything. Like Kathy had mentioned earlier, right? There had to have been a moment where he saw a kid and didn't bark, right? Don't take it for granted that your dog is fine with all these things. If it's a rescue dog or something like that, just always reward the absence of whatever behaviors you like. What is it? Stacey, what's the line that you say? It's like reward the absence of
bad behavior.
Bad behavior. That's what it is. Bad behaviors, right? It's so important.
Right. And you know what? Stop labeling your dog.
Yes.
Stop seeing a kid at 100 yards away and choking up on the leash. Or stop saying to people, my dog is reactive at kids. Like,
Right.
Okay, he is, but you keep labeling that. My dog's working on his social skills with kids. So, put yours on a leash. It's running towards him.
The kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Love
The
it.
kid.
Love it.
All right, so we'll get through about one or two more questions here real quick. So I'll take this one. So Teddy is a year old, and the owner had asked, he keeps biting us when we try to put his leash on. How do we get rid of this annoying habit? So you might catch on to something here. What we keep saying is stop rewarding these behaviors that we don't want to keep seeing. And what I mean by that, totally not being rude or anything, but if every time your dog bites the leash and you continue to fumble with him and you try to grab his collar and you still fight with him to get that leash on, you're rewarding the behavior and you're probably unintentionally even amping him up further, right? So if we have a dog who's getting too cranked when we pick up the leash, because that's usually where it starts, right? The behavior chain usually starts earlier. He sees you put on your shoes, he sees you pick up your keys, you pick up the leash. Usually it's something there that he starts to get amped. What you need to do is break this behavior down into smaller pieces and say, first of all, figure out what's the cue. What starts to get him amped about this? If it's when you pick up the leash, I need now go around your house and pick up the leash 15 times in a day and do nothing until that's no longer a trigger for your dog. In that moment though, right? You pick up the leash, your dog now doesn't do anything because he's like, you've done this 6 times today and I didn't get to go for a walk. Like this is baloney, versus the other word I wanted to use. This is baloney, right? And he doesn't react, reward him, right? Teach him what you want him to do in that moment. And then if you go to put on the leash and he starts to bite you, guess what? The leash goes away. We're not going on a walk anymore.
Now, Sarah, let's talk about the 8-week-old puppy.
Yeah.
They gotta go, right? So how about a handful of high value stuff, drop it on the floor while they're eating, just clip and go. Don't even deal with it.
If it's the clipping and the fumbling with the leash and all that nonsense, we have to work on our collar grabs too, but grab a slip leash or something, right? So you just swing it over their head, get them out to potty real quick, and then work on that collar issue with you putting the leash on and everything separately.
Yeah, that's a good point, is to go back to it, right? Like, don't just forget about that moment. Like if you don't like it, you want to fix it in the moment. But if you have an 8-week-old puppy who really does have to go potty, you put your treats out, clip the leash, go out. And then maybe during your training session, if you're like, I don't know what to work on, how about those collar grabs? How about throwing some treats down and clipping the leash to the collar and taking the leash off and practice it?
That's why having a notebook or a whiteboard is a really good idea, because every time one of these things happens, you actually work it through. You make a note. I know I can't work on it now, but when I have a training session, I'm going to refer to this list and work on something on the list.
Which is a good time to mention. Kathy is doing, I'll ask the trainers too.
We got to talk about that too.
Yes.
But what am I doing?
The Zoom class you're doing on how to set up training sessions at home.
Yes, we will be doing a whiteboard class on that. And it is going to be awesome.
Yeah, and you guys, if you want to check that out, if you go to the website, kathysantodogtraining.com, click that upcoming events thing. You can always check out what upcoming virtual classes we may have available. So let's get one more out of here before we leave, and I'll open this up to all of you guys. Charlie is 5 months old, and his owner has asked, how do you decide whether to take a 5-month-old puppy to weekly training and work at home, or send him to a boot camp for 1 to 2 weeks?
Well,
which boot camp? Let's clarify.
Probably hours.
If you were and we actually have a podcast on puppy and adult boarding and training. So there's a whole episode on that.
Good.
I will say that when you send them to us for a week or two, we jumpstart it. We jumpstart all your training. And some people like that, and then they have to follow up with classes, and we have to see the dog and then weekly. Like that has to happen. It's not a magical thing. It's not like you can send your body away to a gym for 2 weeks, right? And it comes back and you look like a supermodel. It's not like that. We give them a really good foundation. We probably give them more socialization and things that you might not be able to. So we understand that. Then there are people who are DIYers, and they're like, you know what? We're committed to this. It's a family thing. We're going to do it together. Great. And then they can come to class. So I don't think it's an either or for me, like which one is better. I think it really depends on the people and their lifestyle and what their goals are.
Absolutely.
Right. And there's the in-between. The in-between is the fast track program.
Yeah.
The fast track program, right? They can be with us all day. We can be doing lots of stuff with them that you may not have time to be doing. And they're home at night with you. And you're in classes or private lessons as much as you can be. What's fab about our place, man, is you can mix and match everything however you want to. There's really no wrong answer. It depends a lot on what your schedule allows for. If you've got a busy couple of weeks coming up, things going on, maybe it's a good time for a boot camp.
A good analogy also is that whether it's fast track, board and train program, we can build a car, but you have to come to private lessons or classes to learn how to drive the car. Otherwise, the car doesn't go.
I actually know this student. Sorry. I just did a lesson with them the other day, and they are doing a great job with their puppy already. I just want you to know they're doing excellent. They've already started doing a lot of stuff before I even went there.
Awesome.
And there's so much support within the school for the students too. So whether they do fast track or classes or privates or board, like whatever you do, don't forget, you can do Ask the Trainers. We have a weekly call on Zoom for our students that you just show up for. It is free, FREEEEE, free. And if you are a member of the school, if your dog is taking a class or whatever, you can access that. Like, there's nothing we won't do to help you get what you need. And it's kind of like this, except you're live with us. And
Right.
I probably didn't do my hair for that.
No.
But for this, I did. But I wouldn't look this good for your Ask the Trainer. So when is the next one, Stace?
It is a week from Sunday.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this will be dropped as a podcast. I'm not sure when.
Mhm.
So
Right,
we don't
it's the
really know the
16th,
day, but
right?
they are on Fridays and Sundays,
It's not
correct?
this Sunday. It's this Sunday.
Yes.
And-
Yes. You can find the dates right in the student portal.
There you go.
Yep. All right, guys, we're going to cut it there for these questions. We're going to be back for another episode. But for our listeners, as always, if you enjoyed this episode, we love it. If you'd like, rate, subscribe, tell a friend, share this episode. You know, maybe you have a neighbor whose dog barks out the fence all day long at you. Share this episode over in like a little nice little email, or tag them in the post that we put on social media. Be like, hey, this would be great for Charlie who barks all day long outside of your yard. These episodes are also available on YouTube as well, so you can check them out there too.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.